Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Oh, welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I guess I probably need to change that intro since 6 months into this year, we have a third co-host who's never mentioned in that. I just don't know if I can get the person that made that to make me another one. So, I don't know. Anyway, welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It is episode 242, for Christ's sake, and we're here. We're ready. It's a little bit colder in Michigan. It's 73 in my house, I will tell you, without the heat though. So I'm a little excited by that because usually my heat is a little pound update the intro. No, buddy, we're not going to update the intro. Now I'm not going to do it just because you called me out in the chat.
Hashtag.
Anyway, pound. I say pound. Why would you say hashtag? Isn't it pound? It's a pound sign.
That's because that's what we grew up with it as, but that's not what it is anymore. It no longer really matters as the pound sign. Now it's just a hashtag.
Who appropriated that?
Twitter.
I'm opposed to that. Well, screw Twitter. Anyway,
I don't think that's how that works.
It can be. It can be whatever we want it to be. We can make the decisions on this show, buddy. If you're a host, I guess. So maybe you're not a host.
So we can
you don't get to make the decision.
We can stop the evolution of language on Cellar Door Skeptics.
We can. Have you not heard any past podcasts with me on them? I mean, I think Buddy has a list of probably 400 words at this point that I can't pronounce. Plus
I
people's
remember
names.
We were waiting for a call from the Pope and from Obama. Who else did we say was going to call us? I don't know.
I'm not worried about people who's going to call us. I need Buddy's list so that we can. That's Buddy. You have a task. So for Christmas this year, this is Buddy's Christmas gift to you, and I'll teach you how to do this, Buddy. But you're gonna clip episodes.
I know how to clip.
All right, you're gonna clip different pieces of the video, and I'll help you edit them all together so it looks fancy with some music and everything. And we're gonna say like Chris's top 400 words he does not know how to pronounce. You got to find them all and go through all our catalog of videos. If you find a couple with Hannah, I'll be excited by that too. I won't count on it, but I'm pretty sure Hannah stumbled more than one time.
It's
on
the
some
last
words.
segment. It's the last segment when the beer has been flowing. I will mush mouth a couple of words from time to time.
And mine has nothing to do with beer. I just can't pronounce words to save my life.
Usually mine are there. You would think they would be scientific words that I'll jumble up, but I can usually catch those. It'll be something like where. It's just a wow. Yeah, it's just whatever.
Wow. Anyway, long story short, welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics for episode 242. Quick reminder, Breonna Taylor's killers are still loose. I'll just throw that back out there because it seems like, I don't know if you guys saw some of the news recently, but they still are arguing about indictments. And it almost feels at this point that they're hoping something else is going to happen. That will just take the news away far enough so that people forget it. Like, I swear to God, that's what they're hoping for.
My God, that's just kind of the perfect precedent for them because every day something new happens.
Well,
that's horrifying to think.
Well, I'm thinking that the people in the city are basically saying that Breonna Taylor's family got the settlement, I think, of $12 million. So they're like, you got money. This is all we can give you. You should go home now.
Yeah.
And they're underestimating the fact that a lot of people think that money, while important, isn't enough to really fix this situation.
I mean, in theory, actually, money could fix the situation because money's part of the problem with the situation, right?
Yeah. Well, small amounts. We're talking big amounts.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, like we'll avoid. I don't feel the dollar amount should predicate us having to stop talking about it. Honestly, like I think that's a cop out.
Hoping.
But you're right that these people just don't see that humans are humans and they think money can just make it go away. And I'll tell you what, I understand if the laws say we can't arrest these people.
Mhm.
I get it. But it doesn't mean their killers aren't still loose. And that, I'll tell you what, you want to compromise? Create a law that gets rid of that. That way, when these things happen, we can start prosecuting officers, and we don't have people that are above the law. And I didn't know this. Here I feel like a Republican commentator now because I'm jumping off the rails, right, and just going crazy about this shit because it's like, haha, I don't understand this. But I didn't know this. I did not know that if you shoot at a cop, it doesn't matter if you're justified or not. They can shoot back at you and get away with it, no matter what. At least in Michigan. Isn't that crazy?
That's horrifying.
Some of the specifics for return fire and I can't remember exactly the rules, but yeah, that is basically the case. Is that they have been given the there you go. They've been given the basic authority
to murder people. And I was like, and then maybe we talked a little bit about this. I won't lie and say that I do drink during the episode once in a while. But I'm pretty sure that we didn't cover that when we had that conversation, and that was kind of a revelation to me. And like, I texted my buddy, I was like, "Is this fucking real?" And he was like,
"It's like an unwritten rule. It's like a side effect." Yeah,
he's like, "That's why, Chris, you shouldn't carry guns because you're a dick and you're just gonna get killed." Like they're gonna see you, they're just gonna kill you. They're gonna be like, "Oh, he's got a gun. He fired at me. He's dead."
Fair.
Yeah, it's just one of the side effects. They wrote up the rules and then they realized afterwards it's just like, oh, well, I guess we'll just keep it that way. Like it's a frustrating thing that we probably won't solve in the near future. I really wish so. Like everybody loves to talk about the meritocracy. It's the idea that our government is like this place that, or our society is a place that like people do the right thing naturally. They don't need the government to come in and like control them. I would like to see our society look at the guys that did that and just make them pariahs. You know what I mean? Persona non grata. Get the heck out of our city. You're not a cop anymore. Nobody wants you. Like, you know what I mean? Like there needs to be something like that where if the judicial system isn't going to take care of it, it's like make racist ashamed again, right? Like all those kinds of things. Like racist people come out now and just spout their things in public now. They're really they're really feeling emboldened, and I think these cops also don't really get the level of shame that doing something like this may have had at some point, or maybe it's always been this way, and this is just the same thing all the way over. We didn't grow up in a lot of that stuff, but yeah, well, we're seeing it now. But
and I think the other thing that we miss here too, or that gets missed in that point sometimes, is that if you look at these different societies and people want these sanctuary cities for guns and sanctuary cities for this, it's like, can I have a sanctuary city from cops? Is that a thing? Am I allowed to have that? Can I just say, hey, cops don't belong here?
They had it in Seattle for a little bit. Like they had a couple city blocks that they had that they were just as cop-free zone. No cops in, no cops. They had a border guard and everything. That was problematic because there were people taking advantage of the fact that there were no police there and they were actually criminals doing criminal things, which is also another unfortunate thing when we see about the idea of pure unregulated anarchy. We see human instincts, then they're usually kind of gross. So there's frustration on that. But like I would love to see the idea of like a communistic city that was, it would self-regulate and everything and not have its power isolated or condensed into like a police force. Like maybe having neighborhood watches that were more regulated so that like each street would have its own neighborhood watch with a team leader and they would create, like something way more communal as opposed to having these isolated power centers. What we've done is we've basically created these little monsters in the police. Something like that would be really cool, but it would take a super progressive city kind of from the ground up, because like you have to change all those old rules. And we can even talk about old rules when we talk about some of our topics tonight.
Ooh. Yeah, and that's fair enough. I think, and it's funny because when we talk about those sanctuary cities, there's a group in like a local group in Zealand, and I used to be a part of it, and I finally quit after this last post that he did. And then, again, this is like a month ago, but essentially it was a discussion about well, I think we should propose Zealand to become a sanctuary city for guns because I should be able to do this, and we should increase regulations, but we should still have it so that we can have whatever we want. And it's like, well, what? That makes no sense. And then I was like, why would you want that? Like, I don't want you to own a tank. Well, honestly, do you think I'm going to roll up to your house in a tank? I was like, I don't know. Like you're the one that thought of a tank. I'm telling you, I don't want you with a tank, but if you think immediately you should bring it up, that's crazy. And, oh, by the way, guess who else proposed sanctuary cities? Somebody that we're going to talk about when we talk about the militia that tried to kidnap the governor. And yes, I'm going to use hot words, I guess. Am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to just feed into this Republican ideology of let's just use hot topic and hot button words for fuck's sake? Because it's disgusting that I have to hold myself to a different standard when I sit and listen to conservative radio not all the time, but I do listen to it quite a bit now. I got nothing better to listen to while I work when you're at home by yourself. So it's good to listen to that opposing side, Hannah. I know you seem scared, but
I listen to it a little bit, but
I don't listen to it all the time, but I listen to a lot of audiobooks actually right now. But if I don't have that on, I'm listening. I have a couple of favorite podcasts, and then other than that, I do listen to some conservative radio because it helps me feel balanced. I don't want to ever be that person that's out of balance. I don't want to ever be that person that you're like, well, did you ever hear what Bill Maher said? Yeah, I heard what Bill Maher said. Well, did you ever hear what Bill O'Reilly said? Well, no, because he doesn't exist anymore. That type of a thing. Sorry,
That's a good
I had to throw
world.
that shot in there. But that's the idea, though.
If they're conservative talk radio that are like a little bit more smart and not like the screamies.
Yes, no, and I agree with you. Yeah.
So yeah,
but you have to listen to it to understand the other side. And the problem I have is that even on those sides, they still throw out these hot button topic points. And so here you go. Here's another challenge for the show. Keith, I'm gonna lay this on you again because you're the most quiet person here, and you're the Canadian of the group. So you're like the nice person. You gotta start calling us out if we're in the middle of a show and we're doing like a hot button thing, and you're like, hey Chris, by the way, you should put a label on the side that says hot button topic, because whenever I act like a Republican, all of a sudden you could tell the influence. So you should probably stop me and say, hey, you're acting like a Republican. Do you really want to do that right now? Yes? Okay, keep going. That's like the thing.
Yeah, you're good with it? All right, have fun.
If it's something that Occupy Democrats would say, don't say it.
Thank you. Exactly.
Oh.
I finally unfollowed, shut that dang page off completely. Like, it's been on my Facebook. It's on there. It's like, yeah, whatever. Occupy Democrats. I turned it off. I'm done with them. I just turned it off. I can't stand it anymore. Every post starts with breaking X person destroyed X person, or destroyed Y person, or X person humiliates Y person. I'm just like, oh my god!
You're like, shut up.
I know. It's like it's every clickbait word. You're never gonna believe. Boo, whatever. It's like, I'm done.
You're right. I'm not. I'm moving on.
But I think,
so, like, if
I think
we start
this
doing that, I can. See,
I think that's important though, Hannah. Like, and I don't mean to interrupt like a Republican, but I think it's important because if we talk through these things, if we don't honestly catch ourselves, right? I don't tell me I've never done that. Probably more than one time. I probably will do it at least 3 times on the show, not on purpose, right? But it's part of the culture, and then it's part of the culture we're living in right now because of the fact that we are underneath somebody specific that enjoys and prevalicates and pushes. I don't think that's what that word means, but pushes this thing into the public arena.
Yeah. For me, it's I do get some conservative media that I hear bits and pieces that I can get, but for me, I get most of my conservative communications directly from people. Most of the people that I work with, a little news tidbit will come here through something every once in a while. I actually had someone tell me that the quotation from Thomas Jefferson, that sometimes the tree of liberty has to be watered with blood of patriots and tyrants. And he told me that it does not say tyrant. Sometimes it has to be watered with the blood of patriots. And I was like, and tyrants? He says, no, there's no tyrants in there. And I said, yes, there is. That's the quote. I don't know what you're talking about, but it's there. And he's like, I bet $100. I'm like, okay.
Did you take it?
I told him, I was like, right now, go ahead and look it up. And it's just not.
Did you get $100?
No, he didn't.
That
was the end of his conversation of the conversation, and it was just like, I'm right, and then I turn around and leave. Like those kinds of things. Every once in a while, you're like, maybe I planted a seed to, hey, double check your stuff before you say something like that again, especially to me. But like, well, I mean,
It's okay
so,
to say it to Buddy, just not you.
yeah, I guess if he doesn't know the phrase, but it's just one of those things that like I get my conservative conversations from other people as opposed to like the media, and NPR does a decent job because they bring on Republicans to explain like the commission that they were running today for the confirmation. They brought on one of the Republican senators to talk about, the things, and they talked about how great the Amy Coney Barrett's kids were, and the two that she adopted makes her such an altruistic person. Like on point, on message, exactly what they did the whole thing today. But like, that's one of the reasons why I like NPR is they actually do have people on that are from the other side, but they are, liberal bent, progressive bent, because they're a community source podcast or radio channel. So, but I don't know. I don't know. Like I used to ride my dad's truck, and Rush Limbaugh would be on, or Hannity would be on, and I would like listen to for like 10 minutes to drive to the gas station, and I just like I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. No, it's for that reason why I don't really talk a whole lot of politics around my family anymore, is because I can't. The conservatism, it's so deeply entrenched. And what's so funny is how many of them are like anti-Trump because they're like, no, Trump's just an idiot. It's like, you realize that you're still responsible for him, right? Like you support the people who support him. That's kind of on you.
What did I see? I saw something that said that like things like the Proud Boys and stuff like that, like the support of Trump in those communities is not the most important thing. They're using the Trump campaign basically as a way to be able to completely and openly express their ethnic anger, and like to be able to use those buzzwords and stuff like that. So it's just like it's like the Trump campaign hasn't said don't do that, that's bad. So like it's given them like that, a way to just, this is a vehicle that I can put all the things that I haven't been able to say out loud.
Yeah, he's emboldening or empowering racism and racists. Yeah, that's my big issue with him.
Yeah,
so, one of many.
Anyway.
Yeah. So today
on Cellar Skeptics, we are going to do a couple of things. I thought to begin with, though, it would be very important because Indigenous people get, crapped on a lot, right? And today of all days, right? And I'm going to show you something, and I probably shouldn't show you this because it might disturb you. So I don't know if you're ready for this or not.
Trigger alert.
It kind of is, to be honest with you. This is from the president of the United States, or whoever decided to write his blog for him today. But essentially, he's proclaiming today as Columbus Day, right? So they're obviously, today's Columbus Day. It's a federal holiday to some extent. We don't get to celebrate it. Now I'm actually kind of sad because I didn't get my mail. I didn't get my expense check today, so didn't get my mail, but they're celebrating Christopher Columbus, and I guess, do we honestly have to have a conversation about who Christopher Columbus is? No, I'm pretty sure we don't. So we're not going to, and I'm not going to read through Trump's proclamation. I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to give time to racists and people that want to do harm. But I'm going to preface this with two things. We're going to look at Indigenous Peoples Day, which is what the movement is happening right now to move Columbus Day to this. And there's some states that already side with that. But before we even get to that, we're going to look at the definition from it. But while I was doing this research and the research for our last segment about the kidnapping of the governor, I found out that there's underground Nazi white supremacist bands, and there's record labels that sponsor these people. You're going to keep this in mind. It's coming a little bit later because I'm going to torture Hannah a little bit. And I'll tell you what, I listened to this and like, I'm sitting here going, if I could remove whatever that guy was saying, they're not horrible artists. Like it's like old school hardcore, but just reading and listening to like these people talk. I mean, and they're not even overtly racist. They're just like subliminally racist, but it's just awful. Yeah. It's just disgusting. Like I didn't even know these things exist. right? Like,
No, it's one of the reasons why, like at devil driver shows and hate breed shows, you'll see this bleed over from the white supremacy. It's because they love that kind of heavy duty music and a lot of that pro positivity messaging. Like, you won't fight me. Or like, now is the time for me to rise to my feet with the blood from my face, or whatever the rest of the lyrics are. But like those kinds of things, like it's a super positive, empowering message, and they use that kind of buzzword language when it comes to white supremacy because they can't just outright say we don't want what they really want to say.
Everybody who's not white.
Yeah,
and I think
they use different words.
But it's weird, right? And here's the story. Here you go. Here's the side tangent. I go to a lot of hate breed shows. Honestly, like I've probably seen them almost every time they've come around in Michigan. It's a thing we always go to. Big hate breed fan. And there was one concert at the intersection right before they opened up the bottom part of the intersection, so at the top of the intersection, right?
Yeah.
And me and my buddy are on the outskirts of the mosh pit. And at that point in my life, it was like, I'm not gonna get in there. I'm drunk, but I'm not gonna get in there yet because I know what it feels like the next day, and it's a Sunday. And there's this guy who's got a shaved head, right? And you don't think nothing of him. He's got a white shirt on and jeans. Well, he takes his shirt off. And he's got this big swastika on his back. Mm-hmm. But this dude is twice my size. And I'm a fat fucker, right? Like I come in at like 245, 250 easy. And this dude is a little bit taller. And instead of fat, he has all muscle, just like solid muscle. And I'll tell you what.
Edward Norton.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, somebody runs up and tries to hit him in the back of the head. They hit him. He doesn't fall over. And he just starts wailing. So then everybody has to jump in. So like we all have to get in the pit. And then it turns into a mosh pit on top of the brawl, and it was just like, like the guy, like the hate breed on the stage, the one guy, Jamie was like, he's like, fucking get that Nazi, fuck that guy, and he's just like screaming it, and then here comes security just like out of nowhere dragging all of us. I didn't get kicked out, luckily. I got like kind of towards the back of the crowd, but they kicked over half of the people out that were in that mosh pit. They just started kicking everybody out, even though it was one guy. Wow, and I guess maybe, when it comes down to should we be punching Nazis or not is always a question, but in fairness, I think that guy was looking to provoke a fight, or he was very ill understanding of where he was at. Like, where is your social consciousness here, man?
I can't remember which Devil Driver album it is that has the one of their live DVDs that came with it, and Dez stops the show and starts yelling at the guy in the front row. It's just like, you do that Nazi salute one more time, you're out of here. Like he just watching this guy do these Nazi salutes and stuff the whole time. He's like, you do this and you're gone. You're out of here. And everybody's, obviously dogging on that guy. So like they try to keep that stuff from getting in there, but that kind of music.
It's hard.
Yeah, it is. So anyways,
instead of speaking about Nazis, which we'll talk about a little bit later tonight, Indigenous Peoples Day 2020, right? So they essentially want to take and churn Columbus Day away from a massacre, which is essentially what white people did to the Native Americans.
Genocide.
For you, is it what's the difference between genocide and a massacre? How about that?
It's a systematic, direct, intentional doing the deed.
Fair enough.
They planned it and they executed it.
Massacre is me running into a room of 100 people with two swords and just spinning around and decapitating willy-nilly.
All right, so fair enough.
Or what
it's
the
genocide.
Natives did to Custer.
Yep,
that was a massacre. There were pieces of him everywhere.
Yep. So what they're doing is this specific website is actually collaborating with artists, right? Indigenous artists, essentially, to help give and paint pictures of Native Americans in a more proactive and positive way, and help reduce, get rid of, essentially, Columbus Day. And so like they have a toolkit, right? And so like I don't know if any of you looked at it, but they have a toolkit which actually talks about how you can support, them. They talk about some of the culture, what is important about this. And this is huge, right? Because, and when I was growing up, one of the big things in Christianity that comes about, and I don't want to turn this into an anti-Christian thing, but we used to go to reserves and witness. That was a big thing, reservations and witness. Like, and I'll tell you, I've been to Canada more than one time on a Native American reserve witnessing. And in fairness, for me, that was one of the eye-opening things about Christianity, where it's like, well, why are we here giving them food and then preaching the gospel and spending time with them? Why don't we set up these community programs that don't require them to do these certain things if they feel uncomfortable, but helping them fix some of the issues they may have on the reservations, you know? And I'm not saying Native Americans are alcoholics, right? But there is alcoholic tendencies. And when you have different things running around, right? If there's a way to help put programs in place that allow these people to come when they want to take care of the issues if they have them, then that's the toolkit we should be working with, right? You know, we shouldn't be working specifically against, you know, their will, right? With pushing our religious belief inside of there.
Yeah, the Native Americans, I mean, they were introduced to a whole lot of things that the white invaders brought along with them from their basic germs and things like that, but also our sugar and all that kind of stuff. And there were massive issues with their culture, just couldn't handle some of the things that came in there, the natural I guess immunities and things like that it takes a while to build up. And so genetically also, like variations in alcoholism and stuff like that, there are some things that make a big difference. And if you like, they say that some people who are alcoholics, like when they drink, it's like fireworks going off in your mind. And then some people, when they drink, it's just like not good. And those people that they really have a good, harsh and powerful reaction to alcohol, like that can be passed on to your children because, you know, it's a genetic thing. And so, like, I don't know if they've ever done too much research into that for the Native American communities, but like, we basically bombarded their cultures with a whole bunch of horrible, and then we didn't offer them any kind of support system or anything, and we still don't. Most Native American reservations and communities don't have proper policing, don't have protection for their women, they don't have good health care. Like, it's a mess. And it's one of the reasons why the image that we have for our show tonight has Crazy Horse, that big giant monument they're doing, because basically his face is the only thing done. And I was just thinking it's a nice basically a way to describe the situation in the United States, where like we partially recognize that the Native Americans exist, but we are a long ways from actually doing anything real to make them part of our communities and actually take care of them and help them. So like, I really like the idea of this Indigenous People Day taking over Christopher Columbus's horrible history as the Eurocentric. So we were just talking about the Nazis. They love the Eurocentric view that Native America would be nothing without the European settlers coming in and you know, modernizing it. Well, I disagree, but yeah.
Yeah. So that's, you know, they talk about how to, you know, how representation builds power, right? So when we put it in the face, and we all know this, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ plus movement, is if we talk positive, if we're talking about it, and it's not this like hidden secret, people feel more normal. It's easier to come out. Now, the sad thing is we shouldn't have to do this with Native Americans, right? That should not be a thing, but it is. You know,
we could use our pound tags. That's how.
Yeah, pound tag. Fuck off. Good God. Thanks, buddy. Anyway, so you know, but that's the thing here is pound tag. There you go. I don't even want to. Why do I say pound tag? It's just pound. Pound. The time is now. Put it in your ear. Pound. Time to change. There you go. But anyway, you know, we talk about monuments and we talk about all this history. This article, this toolkit gives so much information in here. Like, some of me's tempted to print a bunch of these out and just start leaving them at places I go. You know, I hate wasting paper, and that really bothers me. But like, the importance of some of this information in here is just beyond anything I could have imagined. Like, I spent time this week reading through this and did not know how much info this actually lent. And maybe, you know, buddy, you could talk a little bit about it, but you got your crew up there in the northern hemisphere that is not as good as the southern hemisphere. And no, it's not Pound Town. Thank you.
Wow.
They that's essentially, you have up there similar issues that we had down here, correct?
Yeah. Pretty much all the exact same. Just we for us, it's easier to focus on that because we don't have we don't quite have as prominent, I suppose, of a history of doing things like that to people who don't look like
America
us.
always goes bigger.
Colonialism and imperialism isn't as big of a thing for Canada. I think that's a good portion because of we were more influenced by the French as opposed to the British, who were more influential in the American politics, if I'm remembering correctly. And if I'm not, well, I'm wrong, and y'all can call me out on that. So, yeah, we do I think we may have done more, or it appears to have done more, because overall we've just, like, on a per capita level, I guess you could say, may have put in more efforts or had a louder presence, just because, relatively speaking, it looks like we've done a little bit more, even if it hasn't really been too much more. In terms of Indigenous Peoples Day, that's not so much Canadian, although I think we might have something similar, and I don't want to Google that. But like I said, like last week, I was talking about Orange Shirt Day, which is a Canadian-ish, a Canadian invention and thing, but that's more focused on, say, residential schools than Indigenous peoples, I think. So, yeah, I'm not too sure. I'm just gonna Google that right now. Let's just make sure that I'm typing correctly. Indigenous Peoples Day, Canada, into the Google machine, and while it loads, so for us, it's actually on June 21st. So that's,
is it replacing some kind of weird Eurocentric holiday, or is it just they just pick that day and it's just that day? Because ours is kind of replacing something that's gross.
Well, yeah. I actually didn't know about that until oh God, when the hell was that? Oh, it was The Sopranos. They did an episode about it, I think, and I remember just seeing a lot of advertisements for that particular episode, and that was my first real exposure to the fact that, it's kind of a big deal, the fact that Columbus was a bit of a monster. I'm just trying to see here what led to it.
Do you guys in your family at all have any connections to Native Americans at all?
It's a very loose one. I think it was my great grandfather. So it's, like I said, very loose, very long ago. Nothing significant. For me, it's not what drives me. It's the fact that I'd like to see my people be better. And I would like for people to not be suffering, because fuck them.
Yeah. My father's grandmother was a full-blooded native Choctaw woman, and there's bits and pieces in my family that still are interested in it, connected to it, part of the culture. It's something that they do a little bit. I've never been anywhere near Mississippi, Louisiana, where a lot of those areas are. So, like, it's a thing that was just like, hey, this is something about our family. So I've always just, I don't know, felt more of a connection to natives than I probably really should. But, like, just having that little bit of recognition, like that they're part of me. And so they've always been given the in-group status in my mind, and it makes it easier. And I would love to see more people look into their family tree to maybe see something like that. Because like, if you see a piece of that in you, then it's really easy to give those people a little more respect and say, hey, maybe this is a group of people we can help, because they're part of your family a little bit. Yeah, it's just, it brings them into your group. So, like, I don't know. It's so hard to see someone as other if you have a little bit of that in your genes. I mean, we all know that humans are indistinguishable genetically, but like, just because of, whatever psychology and psychiatric
pound words Hannah can't say.
Well, just whatever more tightly associates with it. I mean, I wouldn't know which it would be, but it's just like, I don't know why people have such a hard time seeing them as part of the United States. Like, they see them as separate things. Like, they own casinos, and they're like this separate nation that doesn't interact, and it's frustrating.
Interesting. So just to circle back to your question about was it replacing anything? The only information I found from the Canadian government itself is National Indigenous Peoples Day was announced in 1996, but back then it was called National Aboriginal Day, and then in 2017, Justin Trudeau issued a statement announcing that it was renamed to National Indigenous Peoples Day. And it's part of the Celebrate Canada program, which also includes Saint Jean Baptiste Day on June 24th, Canadian Multiculturalism Day June 27th, and Canada Day July 1st. Although Canada Day has a bit of a problem with some people as it is, but that's again another conversation. So it's not supplanting anything, because we don't have as proud of a history of our bigots and racists, although there was pushback when they started taking down John A. Macdonald's statues, our first prime minister, as some of you may remember, and it's just because of his role in several racist scandals and other scandals in general, where we look back and we should not be romanticizing our history, but rather just learning from it. But
so you don't have the Monument Alley with all the people who wanted to overthrow your government?
No, not that I know of, anyways.
You could. You never know.
Do I hear a marching band?
There is. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I thought it was a segue. I was like, ooh.
It wasn't a segue. No, that's a good idea though, buddy. I'm gonna think about that as a segue. No, I was bringing up the next part of this discussion, right? Is the states that are changing, right? That are already either officially saying it. Which here you go, Alaska, folks, come on, like. What the fuck, man? Like,
that would be the first one, though, I would think.
But I get that. But this is a partisan discussion. You had the president of the United States not even acknowledging this at all, and hasn't. If you go back and look at his public indoctrinations, or whatever you want to call it,
doctrines, edicts, speeches. You can call them
his
speeches.
Declarations, his pronouncements, either way, whatever
his wannabe discussions,
whatever big word makes his brain smoke when he tries to pronounce it.
Yeah. For 3 years, he's ignored this. It's been ignored. But here we have Alaska since 2017, right? And they've observed it since 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii, that one makes sense.
Well, I will say that like Alaska makes sense more so because like there's a large portion per capita of their culture.
Because they're basically Canadian.
Well,
I'll tell you what. Remember when Sarah Palin was there? You could have Alaska back, folks. Canada, if you want Alaska, it's yours.
Yeah. Oh, don't
you got to
tell
take Trump
that.
though too. You got to take Trump with you. That's a trade-off. You can have Alaska, but you got to take Trump.
Hard no. You can pay us that, and I do mean you could not pay us because he would screw us with his not tax-paying ways.
Yeah, Maine was a little surprising.
I would love to see Trump skirt the taxes in Canada.
He wouldn't. He'd just run. He'd move to Russia. He'd be like, it's just supposed to be closer to getting across that little bridge to Russia.
That pee on me. I'm gonna go there.
I'm curious if he's gonna leave the country after he's president.
Almost. Oh, he probably would.
No, he's gonna start his own radio talk show. It'll be something we have to talk about on the damn show.
Really?
Anyway, Maine, New Mexico, Oregon, not super surprising. South Dakota is kind of surprising, though. I know there's a higher concentration in the Dakota area, so I'm not super surprised by it. But they're like the first from the 90s, man.
Yeah. Literally the 90s.
That's pretty bitchin'.
Saved by the Bell was popular when they did it.
Bill Clinton was popular when they did that. Republicans didn't hate Democrats because they were all the same people in the 90s.
Well, they did hate the Democrats. Really, it was just because Democrats weren't the same, group of friends.
They were the same thing as Republicans back then. They were both the same. Anyway, let's move on. I now sound like Boyce.
Well, I was just going to say, I remember that Clinton was the guy who was basically in charge during the 2000.com bubble, and I'm pretty sure 2000 was the election because Bush was president in 2001, which means in 1990 that would have been W, or would that have been Carter?
Don't know.
So yeah, either way, wasn't
anyway
Clinton.
Yeah, so those are the only states that actually did it, but like we talk about. Like a couple of the states where they've given proclamations, whatever. A couple of states that celebrate both, but for the most part, I mean, when you look at that, right, there isn't a lot of states that are officially saying we're going to do this. And if we believe in states' rights over the rights of, the federal government, right? If we want to go that way, we need more states to actually do this. And, speaking of that, there's an actual NPR article from last year that talks about this, right? And it talks about like the DC Council voting to replace it. And they actually have like an interview for some of these people to kind of talk through why would people want to do this? What's kind of going on with it? So if you've never read this article or listened to this news segment, even in 2019, this is starting to gain steam. And the sad thing is here we are a year later, and nothing's been done about it. And to me, Trump would be super insanely genius if he just had done that today. He could have just declared it out of nowhere, and he would have gained support. He would have gained momentum. And for the most part, is he ever going to honestly lose that much support because of that? Who's going to oppose this? Who?
Proud Boys.
Okay, but all right.
Yeah, I mean,
Fair.
that real
Other than
hardcore conservative,
but
like,
are
guy
they
with guns? But I don't know if this would be a thing where they would really like. I don't know. It'd be weird. I would love to hear their perspective. If anyone that's listening knows anyone who is like a hardcore staunch conservative, would they like Columbus Day being knocked away and have it be Indigenous Peoples Day? I mean, don't step on snack, right? Like they love the fact that like to try to say that the government shouldn't be doing all these powerful, horrible things, yet this is like a great example of the government essentially mobilizing and just removing people it didn't like or want. Well, I mean, how anti-libertarian can you possibly be? These are living people, right? You're pro-life. Yeah, we don't want to kill anybody who's just living. So like there's a whole bunch of stuff that I would think they would agree with, but Indigenous Peoples Day over a Eurocentric holiday is also a thing that upsets a whole lot of white people with guns. So I would love to hear someone's perspective as a conservative on this, but I haven't heard a lot. They basically ignore it.
I could probably offer one. So this is, I heard about this gentleman. I heard an interview with him on one of the most amazing podcasts I've ever listened to. And I say amazing, not necessarily to say that it's the greatest thing ever, but it's definitely to listen to it. You kind of get this whole, how can somebody talk like me talk to you and not reach through the microphone and strangle you for your bullshit? It's called Be Reasonable. It's run by Michael Marsh of the Merseyside Skeptics, Skeptics with a K, I believe, and Skeptic magazine over in Britain now. I think he just got promoted to the editor, and he had on his show Be Reasonable a gentleman by the name of Jared Taylor, who the Southern Poverty Law Center identifies as a racist.
Yeah,
they identified him as a racist. And in this interview that I heard with him, Marsh pressed him on the fact that, or the genocide of the First Nations peoples, and he literally chuckled and said, "Well, if they're still around, it wasn't much of a genocide, was it?" And I'm sitting there, and I paused.
Why are there still apes?
I paused I punched my dashboard to hit the power button to turn off my audio because I needed a second, and I just screamed it, obviously to nobody, but just screamed. I was like, "Are you kidding me, you bloody idiot!"
Yeah.
It was a lot more colorful than that. I'm trying not to ramp up the need for an explicit tag any more than I
Tanner's
have to.
Tanner's already pulled it in, but yeah, we get the point. It's gross.
So that's somebody who would probably have an issue with Indigenous Peoples Day, and he calls himself a quote unquote race realist, which is really just fancy talk for I'm not comfortable admitting that I'm a racist who wants to see the end of people who aren't white. I just want to give it a fancy title because there was a group in a magazine called American Renaissance or Renaissance, whatever, and was basically just all about the racisms.
They're probably so like a guy like that who has fancy words and argues on the internet. A lot of times those people are segregationists where they're racist, but they don't want to commit genocide or remove those groups of people. They just don't want those people intermarrying into their group. No, well, I don't know. That might be even pushing it. But like a lot of these people they just want those communities. They don't want them bleeding in. They don't want them intermarrying,
Yeah.
interbreeding. They literally don't want anything to stain their pearly white race. And so like that's the new softer version, is that everybody just wants a gated community around each group
Yeah.
of people. And that guy's probably one of those people who's, he'll say sarcastic stuff and he'll probably be a little bit aggressive and gross, but like he's not going to come out and openly say stuff that would be genocidal or gross. But I mean,
Yeah. Sorry, I just made the mistake of scrolling a little further on the SPLC thing on Jared Taylor. I don't this is what really infuriates me about these guys, is how much they love to appropriate other cultures and other things. And this guy actually was born in Japan to missionary parents. He lived in Japan until he was about 16. He speaks Japanese and French, teaches and even taught Japanese. I'm just sitting here, I'm like, how does a person who's had that much chance to get out and see the world turn out like this? And then I realized travel does not guarantee intelligence, because my boss has traveled all over the world and he's still a conservative.
Yeah, and also Stephen Miller's Jewish.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to make a comment on that because it may come out anti-Semitic, and I would rather.
Yeah, it just his position, like even his brother is just like he's an opportunist and he's a gross person and he's horrible and whatever, sellouts, whatever you want to label him. Like people are willing to cannibalize their own group sometimes, and they can be radicalized and whatever. Like the human brain isn't a rational thing. When they started behavioral economics, that was the thing. They won an economic Nobel Prize for that. Is that they proved essentially that humans are not rational creatures and do not do the right thing when it comes to money. Well, I would argue that goes into all different aspects of life as well. And like a person born abroad experiencing the world can also be an outright disgusting racist. It's just frustrating, but it can be the case. So Indigenous Peoples Day I still think it would be a really cool thing to hear from more conservatives on whether or not they would support it, because like, you'd think they would, but also they double think is a real thing. So
no, and I think that's a fair point.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty fair. It's I get it. The double thing, we have to be very careful. But I accept a little bit of it if we can. Sorry, losing my headset. I think it's good if we can allow for people to support at least a few issues, even if they go against the grain, right? Yeah, and we have to allow for that growth. You have to be able to allow for that growth segment.
Did Tanner just support incrementalism?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not me. That's not me. Anybody listen to the show? And it's funny. There's a guy I play X-Wing with, that board game I play online, and he found me on Facebook, and I was like, you might not want to friend me. I'll warn you. Like I keep my personal life pretty separate from my podcast stuff. And he's like, oh, you do a podcast? Oh, we should listen to it. And I was like, all right. Oh, I'm open-ended. And I was like, all right, well, I guess if you're not offended by what I say, I am the most offensive person on the show. I'm probably the farthest left person on the show, and I'm usually the most aggressive. So if you could get through that, then more power to you. If not, quickly hit the defriend button and we can talk to each other. But yeah, let's just play the game.
Hello.
But, it was funny because we had actually a really good long conversation about it, though. Because he said, I said, well, most people that support Trump don't listen to our show. Like, that's just kind of a thing. And he was like, well, I'm not a Trump supporter. I was like, oh, okay, well, you might like it then. And he's like, well, I'm not saying I'm, liberal either. And I'm like, okay, well, you probably won't like it then. But, hey, go ahead and listen. I mean, and again, Keith has not once called me out for playing that Republican role. So I'm assuming at this current time, yes, hit that like button. Hit that like button, subscribe. So I'm assuming I haven't done any of these grandstandy, crazy things that some of these conservative talk show hosts do, at least on this show. today.
No, I don't think so. You haven't slut shamed. You haven't fat shamed. You haven't advocated for anybody. So
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about
I
like
didn't hear one slippery slope. Not
there you
one.
go. Thank you. That's what I'm saying is like we all got to be conscious of that. And when we talk about, you're right, Hannah. It's okay. Go call me out. I'm okay with incrementalism in certain aspects. Right now, we're not talking about people's lives being murdered, so I'm a little bit more accepting of incrementalism. Even if I don't believe it's the best path, it might be the best path for the nation right now. Kind of like
That's the longest.
it's like when the
response to,
Batman
like,
thing
a
says,
fun,
right? You're not the one we
sarcastic
need,
side.
but you're the one we need right now. That's what this is.
That's the longest side to like a fun, sarcastic response I've ever had.
Fair enough. Well, speaking of sarcastic sides and things that we're going to talk about tonight, there's a new drug that helps deal with lung butter, and we're bringing the science segment back this week, and it's inspired by the new listener that I was talking to online because they asked what our show was about, and I was like, well, we're politics and science and music reviews and books, and stuff like that, but mainly science and politics, and I was like, well, we haven't done a science segment, so like now we got to commit to this. Like, I can't get Keith to give me a Canadian segment every week, so I got to at least get like an alternative science segment every other week. So that's Hannah's new goal for the show is to like bring one every other week, and Keith gets to bring the Canadian segment every other week.
Ooh.
That way we have a little bit more variety, and we're not just this fuck Trump,
Politics.
fuck Republics. Yeah, who are you going to support? Why should you vote? Why do we have to abolish the police? All these crazy things.
My quick save is microevolution, so I mean, we'll go into the larger segments or something then. But this one looks pretty cool. So also, it's from Ohio State News, so at least some people in Ohio are reading books.
They are, and that was part of the reason I chose this. When this showed up in my Reddit feed, I like clicked on it. I was like, oh, I hate Ohio State as a football team, and I really don't want to put them on there, but I know Hannah's from Ohio now, so I have to give them that. Like, I'm the guy that's from Ohio, but you live there now. So I was tortured for 17 or 16 years of my life. Now, how long are you going to live there and to be tortured? But the article is really
for the moment.
5-year plan. This article is really good though. They actually talk about there's lethal damage that comes from the flu, and it's not just the flu that they actually study, right? They're actually talking about any type of respiratory virus or a virus that affects a respiratory system. So it's not just a flu. It's COVID, right? COVID is technically not a flu, but it could be any sort of natural flu, which, oh, by the way, you should all go out and get your flu shots right now before it gets too cold.
Mm-hmm.
But the nice thing about this is they talk about, what is the contributing factor to death, right? It's lung inflammation. So I call it lung butter to some extent, right? Because you're getting fluid, you're getting crap into your lungs. You're not allowing your lungs to actually get rid of some of this information. Okay, that's a dumb analogy. Your body's not able to get rid of some of these fluids to help allow you to fight your infection, right? So therefore,
you can't absorb the oxygen in the air because the mucus is basically coating everything so thickly that you drown. Emphysema is a great example of it. You literally drown in your own lungs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
And so
terrible.
They're talking about an experimental treatment of MG53. So has anybody heard about this? Is this anything that's ever hit any of your radars?
This one hasn't come up on it that I've seen. This is, I'm guessing this is probably a recent, I don't see a date on it. I'm guessing this is a recent discovery or a recent paper that's been put out because I haven't seen this hit. And so I usually read through the Google Science News and I haven't seen this on there. And they like if something goes pretty big there, or if it's something that's like this is a solid discovery.
Well,
then
this is technically the MG53, man. I'm kind of surprised you hadn't heard about that.
Well, okay, so it says October 12th. So it came out today.
All right, you're ignoring me. Yes, it came out today. It came out. This was part of my morning. This was part about my morning reading. In fairness, so
Okay.
To be fair, I'll be honest. I do. Like Hannah, I have to have a certain part of me that spends my time, reading news articles, and I try to at least give something to science, so I feel a little bit more educated when I have a conversation with you and not like
It's-
the
it
dumbass.
It says October 8th in the American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine. So I don't have a subscription to that one.
You don't. Nope. But
It's a
that's
bit
why this
specific.
article is great, because technically this has been going on earlier than this. As of July 17th, there was an issue that actually talked about this as well.
Mhm.
And so what they're doing is the researchers are infecting mice with H1N1 strains of influenza and treating half of them with a placebo and half of them with the MG53 drug, right? And we could get into what MG53 is in a minute if it gets us past the paywall. And we could talk about this in a minute, but they're talking about how this molecule actually interacts. And the nice thing about this is an actual protein, man. So this is a protein that we develop ourselves in our body. So it's kind of like THC, right? We naturally have THC in our body, but we never like enact on it. And I always kind of think of it like the Force, or like, like, I don't know, you ever read Star Wars? Like, you always have a little bit of the Force in you.
Wow.
And if like you're a little more attuned to it, you can do things to bring it out. So like THC is always
Are
in your
we
body. You just
seriously
smoke a little bit of
bringing- Are we seriously bringing midi-chlorians into this
Oh my
thing
God,
right now?
I am, yes.
How dare you?
Yes, I am a little bit. And it's only because
And
maybe
weed.
George Lucas was...
We just mentioned weed in a lung butter.
And metachlorians in the same segment.
Well, come on,
like,
man. It's...
I'm
but-
I'm down with this. Like you know what? Let's go down this rabbit hole. Let's see where
Thank you. Let's go down the rabbit hole. So if you have THC in your body and you use THC, it enhances the THC already in your body, right? It adds to it. So the ideal with this drug is that you naturally are producing this specific protein. And so the idea is we take this protein and we use it to like focus treat whatever issues or disease that you have, right? Does that make sense?
Kind of. It's what it is. It's a family of proteins that plays an essential role in cell membrane repair. So inflammation itself causes cells to grow and become inflamed. The walls get destroyed and damaged, and problems come from that. This helps repair those walls. And so essentially what this family protein doing, it's kind of like an anti-inflammatory that you would get from muscles and tissue like that. This thing is a different type of thing that's actually doing things specifically in the lungs, which it makes complete sense for what's happening for, inflammation in your lungs and everything causing the problems. So like the particular mechanical functions that they're having here, these aren't uncommon things like anti-inflammatories, membrane repair, but like isolating something specifically for this particular influenza and also the pandemic, like it's really relevant.
Yeah, exactly. And so like they again, like you were saying, it's a natural part of your response system, right? And so they talk about in here like the tissue repair, right? So they're talking about how do we like repair tissue that's been damaged or is in sort of a damaged state, right? And which will help you recover. And I think that's important because that's what's coming out about COVID. We talked about this 3 weeks ago, where COVID is doing extra damage to your body that we don't even know what it's doing right now, right?
Yeah, the scar tissue in your lungs is something that some people actually never get away from. Like there are people that they had it in March and they completely and totally removed from it. They're still having to use nebulizers and breathing apparatus to help them get what they need. And like it's
exactly.
Like it gives you asthma or something worse than that sometimes.
Yeah, and like so when I talk about those things and I get dismissed a lot of the time, in my circles and things like that, people dismiss this. They're like, you're crazy. You want to wear a mask. I social distance quite a bit. I'm very like, I had to go to work today. I wore a mask the whole time. People came in the conference room where I was like hiding and they're like, oh, can we take the meeting in here? It's like, yeah, if you wear a mask or sit, over 6 feet away. Well, we can't talk on the phone then. Sit. Go ahead. Sit 6 feet away, please, because I don't want to sit next to you. Not to be a dick, but it's like, I don't want this. I specifically don't want this because I don't need any more health issues than I have. And I sure as heck don't want any lung issues because if I have to, quit smoking pot, that's going to even be worse than, having to quit eating chocolate, or I guess I don't like chocolate. Quit eating beef jerky. There you go. Which would be a detriment to my life because I love beef jerky. It's like the existential love of my life. Existential. It's like out of the universe. It's not part of this world. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, that's how much I love beef jerky. Like, I don't understand why people don't eat beef jerky all the time.
I saw. Wow.
Yeah.
This we are really tangenting. So the
We're hemorrhaging.
We're hemorrhaging, not hemorrhaging. We're hemorrhaging.
No.
So
We're hemorrhaging.
So part of the inflammation from COVID is the inflammation, and I don't know if you remember this, but we talked about it, the Brady-Kinnon storm, which was previously thought of as the cytokine. Yeah, the cytokine storm. And so, like, the most recent stuff that I've seen says that they're not essentially mutually exclusive, meaning that they can kind of sort of both be happening. And so, like, there isn't one like one or the other. There's a chance that it's kind of both of these things happening. Your body just obliterating things, and like that aggressive destruction of cellular tissue partially is what causes some of these inflammation. And so instead of stopping that storm and instead of stopping that body response, your immune response, this medicine is reducing the effects or helping repair the cell membrane and cell tissue, so that's like, hey, it's been attacked, but also we put a Band-Aid on it right after it was attacked, so everything's kind of okay. Like, it's just essentially the therapeutics with COVID. There's two problems. There's the therapeutics, and then in the immune system or the inoculations. And so, like, you can basically help people that have it, and so you're giving them therapy, or you can create a vaccine and inoculate them from it. So right now we're not really good at either of those things. We're getting better at therapeutics because they're estimating there's going to be around 400,000 deaths, and I can't remember how many million cases we've had, but the therapeutics are getting better. The vaccines are slowly moving forward, and there's not going to be one before the election. There won't be one before the new year. Whatever. It's just going to be a long.
You don't know that
thing.
There's good people and good vaccines on all sides. I'm just saying.
I would love to be optimistic there, but I honestly, I seriously don't think there's enough time to statistically analyze and actually get it.
8 mil goes there.
Yeah.
So I get it all to my phone. So
if the therapeutics get better, less, so that the current estimate is that we might see 400,000 people die from COVID. Maybe we can reduce that. This drug could potentially reduce that. That's the whole point, is that we may be able to save some lives using some new therapeutic drugs. And that's why this kind of stuff is super interesting. So I really like this article. It's a really well written one too.
Yep. So if you want more information, there is one, the Nature article actually talks about the results. They talk about everything. So the first article we talked about doesn't have all of that in it, but this actually breaks down the stuff that Chris doesn't want to pronounce because I'm just going to get made fun of by my co-hosts who have no care for my personal well-being. And so,
you'll get over it. Throw it around. It'll be all right.
Well, I mean,
but this right here is
whisper. You could just whisper at the deaf kid, and he won't understand anything either.
It's actually fun to read through this. And again, I read through this. I won't tell you I understood everything in here, but they talk about how it actually activates, how all the things work together, and how it's producing the enzymes that are helping repair your circulatory system. Oh my God, we're moving on to a topic I can talk about. Oh Christ. I'm done. Anyway, it's a very good article. If you would like to participate and read something that's a little bit more in depth than my ramblings and Hannah's wannabe ramblings and Buddy's whatever he does on a daily basis. Yeah.
The whole hitting the bong you with.
Yeah.
Why is Clint Eastwood angry?
Well, because the last segment that we want to talk about tonight,
beef jerky, so he hasn't had a pee that doesn't burn in 10 years.
No.
I saw something the other day. I saw someone post something, I think it was earlier today. It says, I want to be the kind of rich that I don't get angry at beef jerky prices anymore.
That was me who posted.
Was it you?
Yeah. And that's true. You want to hear? Here you go.
Saw that.
Here's another little tangent story for you, because I guess we're gonna just rename this Tangent Cast. Even though we're doing pretty good at an hour. So we're only an hour and 5 minutes in. But
we're about to talk about.
We're gonna talk about beef jerky prices for a second. We're going
All
to.
right.
You brought it. Don't bring this shit up if you don't want to have a conversation about it. Like, I'm sorry, man. Like, here's the deal. Here's the deal, and I'm going to tell you. All right.
Thank you so much.
All right. How much did you spend on your jerky?
Well, at one place I go, it's $15 a pound. I've been to another place that's $22 a pound, and I'll tell you what, and I'm serious here, it tastes amazing. And you can get different types of jerky, and you can get spicy and non-spicy and barbecue and not barbecue. But I'll tell you what, I remember when I was 18 working at a farmer's market, and I would walk down, and I'd have my cash in hand because I'm all excited as a kid. You know, I got paid cash for working, hard slave labor in a farmer's market, throwing watermelons and unloading trucks. It was bad. It was bad. But I had my, like $8 an hour, right? And I was walking down there, and I got and I would go to the beef jerky stand, and you could get a pound of beef jerky from the beef jerky stand at the farmer's market for $8. So for 1 hour's wage, I could get a meal essentially for $8, no carbs. It tasted amazing. It was a meal. It was a meal for the guy who had to spend 15 hours that day lifting crap and being nice to people that I didn't like. But I'll tell you what, and again, I'm serial here. Beef jerky is amazing. But I've watched the price escalate because you get into these people that want this. They make it this. It's like Scotch tastes better the older it is and the more defined you make it, right? And if I buy $100 Scotch versus a $30 Scotch, I'm telling you, the $100 Scotch does not burn my throat. People will say it does, but it really doesn't actually burn. If you know what you're tasting, it's not a burning sensation you're getting. It's a lukewarm sensation that makes you feel amazing. And but if you drink the $30 Scotch, it definitely doesn't do it. It has a little bit of a bite to it, right? It's like a little bit of midichlorians going down your throat, poking you on their way down to your stomach. But
worst Anakin Pornhub video ever.
Fair enough. We're gonna move on from that. But so, in fairness, when I saw somebody else post that, I actually think about it. Like when I go to a meat market once every 3 weeks, right? Because I typically will want fresh steak, or I have more people coming to my house than I have steak in my freezer for, or I'll just want fresh brats. They have fresh brats that they make on a daily basis, and they taste amazing. So they're $1.25 a pound. You can get, I don't know, 4 of them essentially for $4 typically. So I could go there and get them. But when I go there, they have fresh beef jerky, and they have fresh sausage sticks, and they have fresh hot shots. Yeah. The only thing they don't have is deer meat, for Christ's sake, which sucks. But everything, I mean, they have all the different types of beef. You can get pork, you can get turkey, you can get chicken jerky. They have all this stuff if you go early enough. But their prices, even before COVID, just keep escalating. And so, like, I think about that, and I go, well, what can I buy for $15 for a pound, right? That's like that is a premium steak right there. The only thing you're going to get better than that is like a tenderloin at $20 to $25 a pound, which they sell tenderloins for $22.50 usually if they're on sale. And I'll never buy those because that's a waste of money in my opinion.
Well, I would bet that when you're making jerky, your final product is maybe a third of the original weight.
Yeah. And you're right. It
for
is.
Every pound, you're looking at 3 pounds, and it depends on what cut you're using. I use eye of round when I make jerky. Eye of round isn't that cheap, but I mean, $5.99 a pound, maybe. Or so.
I'd like to.
This is insane. There's no way it's $2.90 a pound. Oh, it's an ounce. All right, that makes sense.
This entire website, I didn't realize you'd pulled it up, so I was just at the homepage, and I was about to cut it and be like, I may have found the new quick save for Tanner, but no, you're already there.
No, we're just gonna go. We're going all in on this. $2.90 a pound or an ounce. So how many ounces are in a pound?
16.
Thank you, pothead.
No,
so
we do the math. Yes. We do the math with the metals.
All right, fair enough. In my world, I don't do the math with the metals. I do it with the green leaf. But that's $18.08 for a pound of it. So that's about right. That's a little bit higher than what I've normally pay. Typically, I'm paying $15 a pound.
Average.
Yep. Well, I'm not in California. I'm in Michigan. Well, you think it would be cheaper, right? And this is definitely true. The $1.31 an ounce. Oh man, we're gonna spend all night. We're not gonna go through this. All right. We spent enough time having tangent casts on beef jerky, but the whole point of I don't remember what your point of bringing that up is, but I could tell you that I do consciously look at that. But I shop the way we buy groceries is I walk into the store and go, "What's on sale? Oh, that's on sale. We're buying it." Very few things do I buy that are not on sale, other than produce, and fruit. Produce and fruit are my two exceptions. Meat, 100% always. If chicken ain't on sale, you ain't eating chicken this week. You're eating turkey, or you ain't eating any meat. That's just the way my life works. And but with produce and fruit, I will pay the premium even during the winter to get fresh of both. And that's I like sometimes you're paying $2 a pound for zucchini or summer squash, but I'll tell you what, I'd rather have that than some frozen garbage or some canned stuff that has more salt in it than you can imagine. So in Tanner's world, when I have to buy beef jerky, I have to contemplate that price because I have a budget I have to live in, and I need my jerky, man. I need it. It's a thing. It's more like I don't need alcohol, but I need jerky.
Yeah. So what it looks like if you go to Costco, it's about $22.30 for what appears to be about 3 to 4 pounds of eye of round. And so for $22 and then some seasoning flavors, you're basically going to make 1 pound to 1.5 pounds of jerky. And that's just you in your oven, putting it on warm setting and make your own jerky kind of thing. So like
I have a jerky maker, so
yeah, well, you have a dehydrator,
but I just don't use it.
Yeah, so like, I mean, that's the other thing is like the cost that you're looking at. I mean, you may get a little bit more if you make it in house, but in all reality, like they're pretty, at cost as far as like what it would cost for you to make it. And if you go massive scale, like if you go to Costco, large scale piles of meat, you're still not going to get that much cheaper. So like they're probably doing a pretty good job in all reality. I mean, it's frustrating.
All right,
but like
stop ruining my. All right, I'm done with you. We're moving on because I don't want to hear that I'm paying an appropriate price for jerky. Yeah. I'm cutting you off. I'm dethroning you. I'll mute you if I have to. Yeah. Moving on. Dictator Chris says no more trying to ruin his feel bad beef jerky moment. I was feeling pretty good that you guys were on my side. Now I kind of feel attacked.
Next
thing you know, you're gonna tell me Blue Lives Matter.
I would just make my own jerky. I don't buy much jerky. I make my own, and it's a big deal. Like it's like a full on thing. Like you turn it on.
So for Christmas, I expect to get some beef jerky or some deer jerky from you, as well as some hot peppers. We're still waiting on our hot peppers, man. Like Buddy and I are sitting here going,
yeah.
When are we going to do the hot pepper challenge? Because I'm all for it.
They just started turning colors. Like I just pulled off the first brain strains and the first ghosts. I made some salsa just to taste the ghosts and see how hot they were, because I don't know if you guys want to do the pepper challenge, because I took a chunk and just did a slice and it was holy moly. So
hey, well, I'll tell you what, if the whole podcast is me screaming into the microphone and Buddy screaming into the microphone, it's all up to you. You're gonna have to learn how to control it so you can mute us.
One of the things that like there's like the hot sauces, and then there's just eating a raw pepper. So like if you
I know.
So like it's a different thing. I don't know. We'll figure something out. But like I do think that just sending you a ghost chili for you to just chomp down on might be a bit crazy.
Yeah. Well, as he would say, get off it. But send it on. Take it. Give it to us. So, in my research, right? So okay. So here's the deal. I'm gonna hide this a minute. I was doing some research. So if y'all don't know, the Michigan governor was threatened to be kidnapped, and the FBI foiled the plot. They also had a plot to blow up bridges and kill people in the federal government, or the state government in Michigan. And there's all these people going around and they're talking about, or they're not true militias because they want to kill people. We don't actually, as a militia, believe that. We're distancing ourselves, blah, blah, blah. The guys that were forming were from a Wolverine militia group. So I was Googling, right? And somebody's taken this website down. This I cannot find. And there's another challenge. If Buddy, if you could find this website before the end of the episode, You can
It's
have the
been-
last 5 minutes to talk Canadian talk however you want. For 5 minutes straight, we'll all listen and not say anything.
It's a dream come true.
But I couldn't find this website. I swear to God that it got taken down. But in my searching, I found this thing called the Wolverines, which is this musical band, right?
Oh,
And
no.
you kind of look through their page and you go, all right, well, there's a weird colored flag. I don't understand why it's so big, to be honest with you, but it is. And there's the little tread on me snake. This is America. Blood is saying United Riot Records. Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's like, I might be able to get behind these things. I don't know. Coming soon. But here you go. Oh, that's all they give us? This is how shitty they sound. This is pretty shitty, right?
Well, it sounds intentionally like some bands try to sound as like garagey and punky as they can. Like it's intentional. Like remember, like Burzum, when they recorded their stuff, it was all through like the microphone was a headphone so that it sounded as scratchy as possible. So like some people intentionally want to sound rough and crunchy.
And I'm okay with that, right? For the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I get the point. I understand the logic. So then I went to their Bandcamp, and they have something called American Skinhead.
So okay. So American Skinhead.
Oops, sorry.
Is this going to be like a cool no effects making fun of skinheads?
I thought so, but it's not. It says, here it is. You're a warrior, the opening line. Your heart is nails. What a pride that will not let you fall. That you believe to break in every way. Degraded your morals and you choose to stay. From talk shows to prime time, they've slandered your name. And when the violence starts, you're the one to blame. But tell them to go fuck themselves. Yeah. American Skinhead. We ain't going anywhere. And I'm like, oh, I found a Nazi band. What? I didn't know this shit existed. Like, I guess I get it. Like, hardcore has Nazis. But here, listen, just listen. Like,
do I have to?
Yes.
I
don't. It's not even good hardcore.
No.
Yeah.
This is awful. Like, this is, if you're a Nazi and you like this, shame on you. This isn't even good music. And then they had this thing called PC Society, and I was like, oh, this is going to be like PC Babies all over again, you know?
Yeah, I remember the South Park. What are you up to, bro?
Yeah. So,
but in the end, like what you have here, this is like the Nazi version of Christian rock.
Nazis ruin everything.
Well, like it's Nazis' version of Christian rock. Like the Christians are like, we're gonna try to take mainstream and make it cool, and the Nazis are like, we're gonna try to take hard rock and make it more racist, and they just ruined it. Because it's insincere. They took some music that they thought was cool, that was from an interesting culture, and they tried to appropriate it and use it for some political message or some religious message, and in the end, it's always clear that it's being used as a tool as opposed to being something sincere and, you know, like organic and real. And you can hear it and see it from a mile away. It's like this person thinks they're doing something, but they're just faking it the whole way through. And
yeah. So it's called hate music, right?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Again, I did not know this was a thing. I feel very uneducated all of a sudden. I got there was hardcore people.
I vaguely remember there being music in American History X. Maybe like a live shows at some of the skinhead parties or whatever. But I vaguely remember there being some metal music and stuff like that associated with American History X. So correct me if I'm wrong, but like I've known
metal music of the day.
Yeah, I've known that this stuff exists. I don't dive into it just because it's a thing I know exists, and some things I just don't really want to know. Like when you know you're about to read something that you're not gonna like, and it's just like sometimes you read something you don't like because it's good to know, but Oh man, did you get Mike 1234? Great password for your luggage, by the way. But the come on, Spaceballs.
All right, yes, I got it. But
Okay,
anyway, move on.
yeah,
Keep
the Corey
derailing.
Feldman song.
Yes.
One of
Yes.
the worst songs.
I'm
I've
not
ever
playing
heard
it because
in my entire life.
we'll get a strike against us for that.
Oh
That's
my
100% a strike.
It was one of the worst songs I've ever heard in my entire life.
But it's still better than this. But look,
Yes, it
these
is.
so these are the records. Get this. There's this thing called United Riot Records. And I'll be honest with you, I would not have known that they were a skinhead Nazi group. I mean, they're on here, right? And they call it the battle cry of Oi and all this other crazy shit. But if they had not been on here it is right here. I did not know United. Why is it so big? This is really angering me. They have their own website. You could shop for products on here. Like, I mean, some of this, I wouldn't know that any of this was, like, I didn't know who this was. I had to Google. That's how I found that last article about how at the rally, these people teamed up with Proud Boys to get in your face.
Boys. I think they have a thing with boys. It's the Boot Boys compilation. Hey, boys. Hi, boys. Ooh.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. I don't,
Give me a break,
I don't know.
It's gross. Yeah, and it exists. And one of the things about this, like, somebody watching may think, like, why are you guys talking about these guys? Why are you showing their website? Why are you showing this? Like, making these things transparent and visible and people realizing, hey, this is operating right in front of your face. Like, your kid may get on the internet and click on this page and start listening to this thinking like, hey, my dad likes to listen to this music. And you just, like, hear some heavy metal coming out of his room and you think, oh, that's awesome. Junior's listening to some good thrash. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, like, there are things that you need to be involved for. Like, people love to say the video games are going to convert your kids. I would bet that Nazi metal would probably do a little more damage. Yeah.
I'm going to say Reddit, 4chan, 8chan, QAnon, Alex Jones, for crying out loud.
Well, Reddit is so customizable.
I got to go back to this comment, though. Snoop Dogg has the greatest midichlorian count ever. I miss that. That's top notch. That's the new hashtag right there, or the new pound tag. There you go.
His lightsaber wouldn't just be purple; it would be sloppy and purple.
His is not purple; it is green. First off,
okay.
All right, moving on. So this is the actual. So what I wanted to actually talk about, and I'm sorry we led you down a tangent because that's how I got to that point, was the tangent, right? Like, I was researching this and then trying to find some, like, actual facts, because a lot of people are like, well, they're not a militia, they're not this and that, blah, 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 blah. Folks, you gotta understand they're different than us. We're not these same people. And so, like, I wanted to do some of the research for it. I don't know what that voice was, but I wanted to do some research for it. And that's what led me down this whole, like, trail of, you know, like, these Nazi music subgenre that I didn't know exist. And I had to tell my wife about it. And she's like, oh, yeah, you'd never heard of that? And I was like, no, nope.
I'd never
heard
understand
this shit.
Bands, but after watching American History X, I was firmly convinced that this was a thing. So it's not overly shocking to me. I just never sought it out because I was afraid of what I would find, to be honest.
I've been in a bike club downtown GR on Division. And I was confronted. They were there.
Jesus.
It was a moment that when you see it, and so like Chris's story with a giant Nazi, like a monster Nazi in the middle of a group of people that are like, what the heck, get out of here. And then being in an environment where there was like, hey, this is cool. Nice jacket, bro. I like your armband thing. And it was just like, I'm outnumbered here. I don't want to be here anymore.
I believe.
Yeah, like everybody was punching the Nazi at the metal show. Everybody would have been punching the deaf kid at the bike club, and homie don't want to play that. So we So that's one of those things. Every once in a while, it's a reminder that it's a real thing. And so, like, you found this. This is actually from the state attorney's office for Eastern District of Michigan.
Yeah,
so, like,
it was.
So that Wolverine thing is a group it's like they call themselves a militia or what?
Yeah, yes. So essentially, they call themselves a militia. Again, in Michigan, a militia is a very loose term, right? And my buddy and I were talking about this weekend, which actually kind of spurred me to do some of the research because he's like, a lot of these places will not call themselves militia, shouldn't do that anymore because they don't want to be associated with this. And I was like, well, hold on a second. A militia doesn't mean that they have to be bad. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, in the past, we've disparaged it a little bit, but nothing of an extreme stance because, like, I get the point of what militias do, and I'm not actually opposed to correctly demonstrated militias, right? Like, if we had a county building that held all of our guns and we all owned a gun and we could go to this county building and the only way we could get into the building was with our code and the gun had our code with it, and then you had a personal gun in your house, like a small one, but your big weapons were at a facility. And then if the government came and tried to take over, we could all rush there and try to kill the government. I'm okay with that type of militia, personally.
Well, I advocated.
I mean, it happened before.
The idea of a militia is kind of like a communal, a communistic, a communal governing force. Like everybody in the area, all the able-bodied men of the city, of your road, of your subdivision, of whatever tiny little segment you want to do, they get together and they look to protect themselves. Like you have a problem, an issue with mob rule and those kinds of things inside militias. But in the end, the idea of like militia being a small governing body in small communities, it's not that bad. It's just one of the things that it seems to unfortunately devolve into extremism very, very quickly.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing here that's kind of where we're headed is because I was talking about that local group at the beginning, right? And the guy wanted to have a sanctuary city for guns. There is a guy in here that has a beard, which is a lot of them. But there's a guy that has a beard in here that essentially petitioned his county to have a sanctuary city for that. And then they kind of went and interviewed the mayor, and they're like, you got a guy that's essentially like a terrorist, and they're like, yeah, we don't agree with him. That's not what we thought when he wanted to create a sanctuary city. We're very sorry. We still believe we should have one, but hold on, folks. We're not associated.
A little further through.
Yeah.
Well, apparently one of these guys was actually lived right down the street from my sister-in-law as well. Like they knew of the parties where they were gathering and doing these things. Like
what?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Division. It's yeah. So like, I mean, this whole world is not this like hidden away, secret society. This isn't a Dan Brown conspiracy. This is Larry the Cable Guy's conspiracy. It's unfortunate and it's terrible and I'm so happy that it was foiled. I mean, I don't know if you guys know the details. Like they literally were casing Governor Whitmer's vacation home with thermal goggles. They were seeing where people were sleeping, when they were there, how they could get in and out of the facility very quickly. They were looking to kidnap her, and I don't know if they were looking to pick her husband as well, but they were going to do a mock trial to put them to, I guess, try her before the Lord and Savior or some whatever thing they were going to do. I mean, there was a lot of details talking about the bombing. They had code names for the baker who was the bomb maker and delivering a cake.
What about the candlestick maker?
I don't know. I'm sure a couple of guys were probably involved. I'm guessing knives and weird phallic objects. I don't want to get into the details, but in the end, this wasn't just some like, these weren't the weekend warriors that you saw at some of the protest marches where they were in the body armor, but their stomachs were protruding so much outside from underneath the armor that it didn't really protect anything anymore. These guys were way more mobilized. They did training in other states, planning and prepping, and there was a lot of stuff that there's a reason the feds were watching this more than just like, hey, the NSA said these guys are being mean online. This was much deeper than that. This is one of those things where it crossed over and went beyond the idea of thought police. These guys were actively. If you think you live in a society where you can talk to your friends about stuff like this and nobody's watching, you are incorrect. And so the Fed was able to watch and see these keywords like we were talking earlier, and they got keyed in. And once they were in there, they had people that were actually doing incognito, and they were doing undercover analysis. All of the things that should happen to completely and thoroughly know that this is a major threat before they did this. Like, this seems very thorough. I haven't seen anything where I was like, man, I wish they would have waited a bit and known for sure. Like, everything I've seen on this is thoroughly and completely incriminating. Obviously, I could be getting information that's been filtered through the system, but in the end, like, what they were looking at doing to the governor was a real thing. And so I'm super happy. It's not my governor anymore, but I did vote for her, and I'm glad that she and her family are all safe. These guys are gone, because, I mean, I don't know. It's frightening to think about something like this, because if something did happen, I can't guarantee you that the president of the United States would openly come out and say it was a bad thing.
Oh no, he wouldn't. He has a problem with that. He knows some of his biggest supporters.
An executive for a state is a big deal. I don't know if the president could outrun that, but I honestly don't think it would be any. I don't think he would be able to call it.
Depends on how willing they are to step on snack.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It would have been weird. It would have been gross. It would have been like when I don't know. It's just, I can't think of any example where something that extreme would have come out where the president would have been forced to actually, like Elijah Cummings or something like that, where like there were some words said, but it wasn't sincere, and nobody went to the funeral proceedings and stuff. Like, I don't know. I'm glad nothing happened, basically.
Yeah. And here's some of the pictures that, they were taking, right? And they make this out to be, I think, I like this Sasquatch statue, by the way. But, they make this out to be this very, left, or those very right wing, look at these white trash people. And I don't actually agree with this article as much. I get their point, I get, if this is what they have, the 3%er flag, I get that, right? Like, they did have two people had a 3%er flag out. I get, and I get we have to go after that, but I want to caution, I want to incrementalize here, right? And not just completely say this is this big white right-wing thing. And we could talk about how the governor handled it in a few minutes here. But when you look at some of these things, you go, well, I mean, they have been seen, right? So what? I mean, hell, that guy's wearing a mask, for Christ's sake, But we look at where they live, and we cannot just sit there and say, this is a dumb picture. This is honestly doing a disservice to the conversation. Like, have you been to my house? I have not anything that bad, but pretty close, hanging up. And I'm lazy. I just not going to change it.
It looks like the FBI went through that window or something. Like there's like 3 or 4 pictures of it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And here's some of them at the Capitol, right? And so I get this. I get it. They are not so we want to be careful, because there's a slipping point here, and we don't want to go down this big slippery slope where we go, all militia are like them, because that's not true. That is not true at all.
Matter.
Okay, that's not what I'm saying, jackass. What I'm saying is we shouldn't lump in 13 bad eggs with 500 people. Now, I'm going to tell you, anybody going to protest mask with guns at the federal or at the state capitol, they have issues. There's issues already right there, and they're there for the controversy. But that doesn't mean they're all domestic terrorists. It does not mean they're all trying to do it. And I'm not trying to be an apologist here for these people, because if you know me, this is the exact opposite. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that we don't allow this picture to get painted, because when we paint a extremely negative picture and associate others with it, we're no better than saying, well, that black person broke into a car, therefore every black person I see next to a car is breaking into it. Let's not do that. And let's actually analyze who these horrible individuals were that did these things. This guy here, Adam Fox, had to move into the basement of a local, place that he worked. This guy right here should not be condemned for housing. He didn't know this dude. And now maybe he knew a little bit about him. And maybe this guy's conservative too. Maybe he's a Trump supporter. Maybe he's all those things. But he's not a militia that says, I want to go kill or kidnap the governor. He's not that guy. And so what I want to do is I want to say is we can look at all these things and we can be honest about it, but let's be very fucking careful in what we truly want to accomplish out of this, because if we're going to spend this whole time saying there's good people on both sides, we're no better than Donald Trump, right? But if we are going to do nothing but just associate every stereotype with them, we're also no better than the racists that fucking want to hold up that Trump flag because it makes them feel better about their issues in their life, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that you run into is obviously painting too broad of a stroke. And so, like, a lot of the pictures in there, you see small town America. That my wife's family's hometown looks just like that. It's a small town. There's not much there. You could do that all over this country. There are small cities that look just like that with little Sasquatches or whatever the heck they got going on. Like
Don't talk shit about Sasquatch.
You know what? But what it is like every town's got their things, man. They got their little stuff, their small storefronts, the storefronts that don't exist anymore because that small store doesn't exist anymore. And everybody drives to the local Walmart and they think that's a great thing and they don't realize what they're doing. But that's a whole nother capitalism discussion. But a lot of times, like these people are born and bred in economic inequality and information and disinformation. And it's unfortunate. And a lot of times this kind of thing can be construed negatively for a ton of people. But like the examples that you posted multiple times for the armed protest or whatever, those people, they're pushing the edge and the boundary as far as they can take it. And the guys that were looking to do this stuff to Gretchen Whitmer, they're pushing naturally further and further and further. And until like society and the rest of us all look at something like this and say, this is too much. You've gone too far. We are going to clamp down. We all disagree with your ideas. Like they're too much. Like if you want to be part of society and vote and make changes and be part of politics and whatever, which the Republicans have done for the last decade, and they are so winning right now. My God, I'm so tired of losing being a part of the Democratic Party, or at least
are they winning good? Is their winning that good?
They have been winning for themselves. I'm sure they're happier than heck. They've just stacked the Supreme Court so heavily that we're going to be dealing with this for 20 years. But like, I mean, they feel like they're winning. They voted for Donald Trump because they wanted to get the Supreme Court stacked and the judicial system stacked, and they're going to get it. I mean, they are going to get it. There's no way to stop it. And so like a lot of this stuff, like once you get into that narrow window of what you're thinking of, like a lot of the guys that have been radicalized and stuff like this from these militias or whatever, like sometimes it really is a misinformation thing, and they just get down that rabbit hole so far, and it's hard to see it. But well, I have a hard time like taking my hands off. Like I really do think we need to be aggressive, even to the guys that are like protesting with weapons. Like get your guns off the Capitol.
You bring up a good point though, right? And so let's talk about the radicalization of words, right? Because we're here because of that. We're not here because a bunch of people wrote really good books that make you want to go out and kidnap a governor, right? Nobody's done that. You name me one book that inspired these people to create a plot to kidnap the governor. It doesn't exist, right? And I could tell you there's a good book about socialism that talks about why we should rise up against our capitalist overlords and get rid of people that are enslaving us to make money off us. I can quote you that book. It's called The Work. And we could talk about that. That's a great book, actually, by the way. And yes, I'm not a socialist, but I'm pretty close. What?
Is it the best book? Does it have the best words?
It has better words than the best words that came out of Orange Cheeto's mouth yesterday. But we do have to talk about that because that was the governor's initial reaction. Now, I have two responses to that, right? Like my initial response is leave her alone. Fuck you. Like, were you just threatened to be killed? If you were just threatened to be killed or kidnapped, and then like, I mean, and in fairness, if you're a woman and you're threatened to be kidnapped, we all know that it's not just, we're just going to kidnap you. There's all sorts of crazy shit that could happen. We know that. That's a fact. Those things happen. You don't just kidnap a woman and stick her in the back of a car and go, oh, we'll deal with you later. We're going to take you to Wisconsin and drop you off at the local precinct. That's not how that works. if you're that crazy, you're going to actually do something like that, you're probably going to do something even worse. But either which way, you have your initial reaction. She says things, and I get it. She's a human, though, right? Are we not allowed to feel human emotions? Like, for fuck's sake, we've had a president that has spent 3.5 years cultivating fear, anger, and hate. That's what he is cultivating. That's what his movement's about. It's not about building a wall. It's about building hatred towards the people that don't live here. It's not about
power.
Exactly. And amassing power. But he's not doing that very well. He is helping the Republican Party get power, but he personally is not amassing any power. He's a failure at amassing his own personal power because he's going to still get taken out. And I can tell you, if he refuses to leave the White House, there's no way all these Secret Service people are just going to surround him and be like, we're with that guy. No one's going to do that. That's not how this works.
I've been curious and I've been thinking about this. Is like you see a lot of the guys in this conspiracy that were gonna kidnap the governor, didn't like her mask mandates, whatever. And I also think about those guys are basically being manipulated as pawns by a few people who are spouting whatever they agree with as like their leaders. I am super interested to see how much the Republican Party has been using Donald Trump as essentially an unexpected tool to get what they want, because I mean, at one point they had to be like, okay, well, we can't not have this guy, so we're going to use him, but he's such a complete simpleton that we can basically just drive him wherever we want him. And so they've been doing that, and I'm really curious to see what happens in a while if the Republican support and all of the people who love him so much, like the GOATs, God Emperor of the United States people, the hashtag whatever, # whatever, if those people keep supporting this blithering idiot, the moment he is no longer president and has no power, like he's like the king of They'll disappear. He's like an idiot bowing before the king of Rohan. You have no power here.
Where's your clothes, Emperor? Where the fuck are your clothes?
That's what it is. And so, like, I'm so curious to see, is this just he is a fake king that's being manipulated so that the Republican Party itself can get exactly what it wants? They saw and they manipulated and they got what they wanted. Mitch McConnell, the master strategic, everything he's done, it's been working out. I'm so curious to see what happens in the future when, if it's not 4 years and Trump is gone, and he is gone in this current election, how fast will they drop their hands and just run from this guy? Will he be, open for other stuff? Will Biden pardon him? I really do think the Republicans will wash their hands of him. As soon as they've gotten what they want, they'll treat him like a resource, like an immigrant worker, and they'll just be done with him. I mean, and so like these guys here that are like super part of the culture of militia and gun culture or whatever, will they be dropped of like those? They're not part of us. There's no true Scotsman.
I don't think that's I don't think so. I think they're going to hold on to it for a while, and I only say that because I think the rhetoric is strong. I really do think. I mean, and that's what Whitmer was talking about. So in her initial dissent is saying, "Holy crap! Think about this. What's going on? Let's be very careful, here, because we have somebody in power that's giving rhetoric." And we talked about the first debate a couple weeks ago, right? No, last week. We talked about it last week, right? And when we say stand by and stand down, you're giving mixed signals. You're doing all these other things. What you don't, what he doesn't get, again, and maybe it's simpleton matter, like you're saying, Hannah. Maybe it's a simpleton or an idiot savant king that just happened to, come to power, right? Maybe that's what that is. But those words and the things he's saying like that do empower other people. And I'm not saying we have to censor or do any of those other things. I'm not advocating this. But what I am saying is we have to recognize these things as a tyrant discussion, right? These people are talking about doing things that are murder, that are illegal, that are federal crimes. And I'll put it to you this way. They got the federal government involved. The government got involved even though they hate Whitmer. So if the FBI was in Trump's little, pocketbook, then Trump sure as hell doesn't know how to spin this very well. He's not the master of spin.
Once Comey left and they got a new FBI director, right? it should have been Trump's appointment. It should have been a guy that was totally in his thing. So like that's what I'm thinking is like a lot of the section of the government, they're not. They're the people that are in place will use him as a resource, and then as soon as they don't have to bow down to the emperor anymore, they will wash their hands so fast it'll make your head spin. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm guessing. I'm guessing the politics in Canada might not be this aggressive, but I'd be interested to see if you guys see anything similar.
I mean, as I've said a few times, is that Trump style conservative politics are. I mean, Trump. They're not necessarily old or new or unseen, but he's definitely made them made the appeal of them a lot better and empowered them to be a lot worse. Instead of just simply saying this politician did that, it's basically you can boil it down to, well, this politician's a poopy face, so whatever, because that's literally all the conservative argument. All the conservatives could really say about Trudeau when it came to trying to actually establish what their platform was. It was like, well, Trudeau's a poopy head, so don't vote for him, vote for us. He wants to raise your taxes. He wants to raise your taxes, and we want to put more money in your pocket. Which I got to tell you, hearing Andrew Scheer say something about putting money in my pocket, I was just like, you keep your hands out of my pockets, you greasy little bastard.
Oh, you like it. Don't give me... No, I don't even want to hear that. You like that.
Hey, no, not from him. Not from him. Consent.
I bet you do. Have you ever had that before? Have you ever had it?
A hand job while somebody...
All right, so you don't know. Pocket? So, yeah, from him, if you've never had it from him, you don't know.
Yeah, you know what?
Let's stop trying to shame... Stop trying to shame that lifestyle.
His gross knuckly arthritic hands.
I do not consent to him trying that.
All right. Well, you'll never know then, so you can stop talking about how you do know.
Anyways, it's becoming like our conservatives are now becoming a lot louder and more boisterous, and I hope that they're getting to a point where they fracture again, because that was kind of how the NDP was able to try to fix things for a few years in Alberta. It was because the right wing had divided itself.
We were hoping the Tea Party would do that here, but it didn't.
Yeah, they just didn't do a very good job of it, because then
they took over.
Trump. But it's the Trump style, the smear politics, the perpetually poisoning the well. It's getting to the point where I don't enjoy any sort of political discourse, because it's something that makes my eyes want to roll to the back of my skull, because it's just so people get so hung up on small little non-consequential bullshit. But now you've got the class clown who like the Louis C.K.'s, the David Silvermans, who at first we thought they were on our side, and then when we called them out, they turned on us because suddenly we stopped giving them everything that they wanted, which kind of exposed them for who they are. And now suddenly we're having to deal with politicians basically, or people who we thought were reasonable people, being exposed as trolls, and literally that's all it is. And it's so disheartening, because it's like, well, at what point does this become relevant again? At what point does this matter anymore? And the Conservatives recently elected Aaron O'Toole, that's his name, O'Toole, as their new leader, and from what I've been seeing, is he's not better than Scheer was. He's pretty much a lot of what Trump style conservative politics are gonna be, is just all taunting the other side, goading them up, because they know that as long as they can keep the other side tripping over themselves trying to correct all of their mistakes and get things and whatever, the lie is halfway around the world before the truth is even finished putting on its shoes. And that's all you need to do to win politics now. So it's definitely leaking in. And
watching the geopolitical recession that we're seeing for like populist politics, it supports the strong man, right? So like
not even the strong man, just the strong looking man.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like they're putting on a persona. And so like when we look back to World War One, when we look back to World War Two, when we look back to the most problematic parts of modern global politics, we see the rise of the strong man, we see rise of the straw man, and
I like that.
You know what I mean? Like it's it's frustrating and it's difficult, and you would love to think that in our modern society that we've inoculated on ourselves, but
And we should
But
have.
you haven't.
That's
yeah,
such an
so,
infuriating thing. It's like we're sitting here, we have access. Like I hold in my hand
it's
simple
not that
technology
hard.
that all it takes to get this figured out or to learn.
But those are
anything is-
experts, and they can't be trusted.
Oh, yeah, right. We can't trust experts. Everybody else is an
Yeah.
expert. I'm just, it's so
Yeah.
infuriating because like I had this realization when I was in university that I was like, I hold in my hand a device that literally has more computing power than it took to get to the bloody moon, and I spend enough time looking at pictures of cats, and we're gonna leave it at that. And so I stopped bringing my laptop to some classes because I just had my phone. I'm like, whatever. I'm just gonna use it for something productive then. And now everybody's, like people sit there having a conversation. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what the internet is great for. There's a song about it. It's
Don't
You
sing
know,
it.
not right now. That's after show.
Anyway.
So we have no excuse for ignorance, and part of the problem is, of course, is all the the search engines trying to capitalize off of what we're doing, and
It's
it
a
listens
search
to us for
engine, not
keywords.
an answer engine.
Yeah, and ad revenue is driving it, not
Yeah.
the right. And that's part of my issue with a lot of like the free market these days, is that it's not so much about the right thing, it's just about the thing that sells the right amount. So I just it's driving me nuts, and it really makes my brain get all even foggier than usual.
Yeah.
So
Well, we're gonna wrap up the kidnapping section. So I before we get into quick saves, real quick, I thought this was funny. Eric Trump canceled an event at Michigan gun shop after the former employee was linked to the domestic terror plot against the governor. So even Trump's kids and stepkids can't. Is he a stepkid? No, a marriage kid.
He's legit. Yeah, he's
He's a legit kid. All right,
yeah,
so
he's-
even the
he-
legit
yeah.
kids can't come to Michigan because they're very afraid of being shot at a store.
Well, if you think about this, that if the plot hadn't been discovered, Eric Trump would have gone to that guy's gun shop and talked. Like, let's say this crackdown happened in 2 weeks from now, right? Like they arrested all these guys in 2 weeks from now. They weren't certain this week, so in 2 weeks they had enough information. He would have gone and done a speech with those dudes. That shows you who he's talking to.
Yep.
Let's
Anyway,
go with that.
I just thought it was funny. I thought it was funny. I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. So this week, my quick save is still a little bit political because I couldn't help myself. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to say, all right, let's talk about the stock market for a second, because what does Trump Twitter about? What does he poop out of his mouth about all the time? How great the stock market is done. And my question is, all right, let's look at statistics, because to me, if in 4 years you've raised the stock market, how much? And what's the percentage you've raised it compared to other presidents? So there's this neat little website called Macro Trends, which I'll be honest, I did not know about this till today. So, but I'm geeking over here because they're showing you different, so this one's just Trump, Obama, and Bush, and they're showing you the different trends. And so now here we're gonna look at there's Trump. So Obama, so Trump started higher, but in the long run, Trump and Obama are the exact same place based on their presidency right now, right? And so if we get Trump in for another 4 years, hopefully we don't, if this trends the same way, then the question becomes, is it the sitting president and the laws that he makes that actually contribute to this, or is it other circumstantial evidence? And so this specific website doesn't answer you those questions, but they give you all the statistics for you to make a determination on your own, right? And I was going to say analyzation for Keith to see if he would laugh, but
I just love the fact that they keep touting Trump as the best, amazing, most superior growth ever. He's matching the Obama magnitudes of growth.
Exactly. And so
and
look,
but he's
this
not
came
Obama.
off of a Bush era where there was a decline.
Yeah.
So Bush stayed steady, came up a little bit, and then decline towards the end. And then here comes Obama. He's on the decline here, which is what people criticize. This is what Trump actually criticizes, is this 14 weeks right here. But what he doesn't realize is that Obama came back. The difference is where Obama left him was up here.
Yep.
Right? And then that's when Trump just was able to climb. So Bush was on a decline. Obama was on an upclimb. And then therefore Trump gets to be on an upclimb with it. Except for this dip right here because of COVID. And I'll be honest. I'll cut that out and move on with my life. Like, I'm not going to hold this against him, COVID. And I think this is a disgusting point that we could just ignore. But the long story short about this website is there's more info here than just this. They look at 100-year historical. They can actually you want to know there's some disgusting trends in here. And when we talk about minimum wage not raising and all these other things, it's disgusting, right? And you can also
the fact that the Dow Jones, basically what you're looking at, the year-to-date performance, the Dow Jones is back to where it was before the drop, basically, and we have not seen any major increase or benefit for the people. There hasn't been a second stimulus or anything real for everybody else, but all the rich people who own massive amounts of stocks in the Dow Jones Industrial Complex, they are back to where they were as long as they held on to what they had.
Yes, so which is good news for me, hopefully.
Yeah,
because I didn't want to lose a bunch of money. But again, you don't understand my point though. Like when we talk about statistics, this is what's important, right? These are hugely important, right? This is very, very important to look at trends. And I get 2020 dips because of COVID, and I'm okay with this to some extent, right? Understanding why it dips and how it dips. But when we look at 2019, we're not even quite where we were at before. We were at the beginning of the year. And then if I go back to 2018 and I get rid of 2014, before COVID hit, you're seeing a dip in 2018. Then in 2019, it rose up, right? Mm-hmm. And so the idea is then I could take 2019 off and I can go back and look at 2017. And I can actually look and trend these out. And I'll be honest with you, I think this is a shitty trend. Like, to me, I'd rather see this in a long line graph. That's me personally. But you could see 2017 coming up here and then fucking 2018 just tanking, right? It's not able to match the same level, and then it just tanks in 2018. And there you go, buddy. Homework number 5 for you is to figure out what happened at the end of 2018 that tanked the Dow Jones. I don't know. Like I said, I found this personally interesting. And I think it tells a story between Cheeto Man trying to claim he's the best president ever and he can affect all the Dow Jones.
Well, it's easy to claim growth from the bottom, but anyways, so my quick save is essentially the idea of microevolution happening in humans. We all know that we touted evolution as being true multiple places. I actually did a debate early on in our podcast about
that was painful.
You know what I mean? And in the end, what we're looking at is the idea of microevolution. Most religious folks will completely and totally accept the idea of microevolution. They believe that species can change, but new species cannot be created. Well, that's cool and all, but it'd be weird if that microevolution was happening in humans, because weren't we created in God's image, and weren't we basically created as superior, in charge of all the things? Why would we be an evolving creature if we were designed by the divine watchmaker? Well, this study coming out of Australia basically came through with a bunch of analyses and found that babies have shorter faces, smaller jaws, extra bones in their feet and legs, and there's also a change in the number of teeth that we're seeing, as far as the smaller mouths that have less room for your wisdom teeth and things like that. Part of it is because we see an artificial selection. It says as part of natural selection and our ability, increased ability to chew food. I would say that's more artificial selection and that we are no longer in a natural selection state. But we have food that's easier to eat across the board without question. And we talked about that a long time ago about fire making meat easier to eat, and it made humans capable of consuming way more calories and protein for our brains and stuff like that. And that's an idea of why we have the evolution that we do for our intelligence. But this is basically we have less teeth because we have less teeth falling out. It's easier to chew, and it might not be as necessary to have wisdom teeth. And then there's also an artery in the forearm that supplies blood to the hand that has become more prevalent in newborns since the 19th century. And so like we see these arteries giving more hand, more control, more feelings, more blood to the hands. And
Or hand-to-mouth disease.
yeah.
I'm
But
sorry.
yeah, well, anyways, basically this artery used to form in the womb, but after the baby was born, or it would disappear after the baby was born, and the radial and ulnar arteries had grown. So like this artery itself is something that either it was working in our past evolution and our past design, when it comes to the way that nature was essentially choosing which things to pick, and this was there, but we had turned it off. It was basically being shut off and it was disappearing. But now through evolution and through our genetic processes, that thing is still staying. So like we've turned a switch on that we used to turn off, but it was turned on before that. So like there's three things happening here. It's really, really cool to see like this level of variability in microevolution in modern humans, not just like we're not looking at Egyptian bodies or something from hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago. So like this is really cool stuff that like we don't see a lot of the times. We don't see studies about this kind of stuff. We see it in animals, we see it in that, but we don't see it a lot in people. And I haven't seen a study like this ever that talked about the microevolution changes in modern humans, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I am not quite of all the genetic advantages that I was given. Unfortunately, my father's lack of wisdom teeth was not one of them. So my dad and my sister both have that gene or that gene not turned on. Either
So
way
they
you
didn't have
slice it,
wisdom teeth
they
at
don't
all?
have wisdom teeth.
I had
So
3. If that makes any sense.
I've only had 2 of mine taken out because the ones, and those were the top 2 that I had taken out, because the 2 that are in my bottom my jaw here, they are actually going right through the nerve. And when the surgeon looked at the X-ray, he pointed out to me, you could see it on the X-ray that it went right through the nerve. And the surgeon actually said, I don't want to touch those if I don't have to. According to your dentist, they haven't moved in a few years. I don't want to risk you losing feeling in your jaw when you might get another decade or 2 out of it if your wisdom teeth continue not moving. So let's just leave it at that. And I'm like, okay, I like that idea. So yeah, I wasn't fortunate enough, and I had a good laugh, because when you brought up the whole creationists believe in like microevolution but not in macroevolution, all I could imagine was that scene from The Dumbest Thing Ben Shapiro has been recorded saying.
The WAP video.
No, that's the second. Where he's like, you don't this global warming, even if the oceans are rising, people who have oceanfront houses, well, you don't think they're just going to sell them? And then the video pauses and the British guy comes in and all you see is just a hammer cutting through a green screen, and he goes, there's just one problem, Ben. Who's going to buy them? And all I could think was just paraphrasing that by being like, just one problem, creationists. Where do you think species divide comes from? Small changes building up over time. But that just made me laugh. So that's where my brain goes with some things.
Well, where does your brain go when we talk about soft body Tetris?
Oh my god, this is the most amazing thing. I was going through Reddit the other night and I found a few of these videos, and this is an entire channel called C4D4U. I guess it's this 3D animation. And this is actually one of the most recent ones that he did. A lot of the videos that he had done, they actually didn't have the feature where when you're playing Tetris, if you complete the line, it disappears. So he had a lot of criticisms for that. Or they did anyways. I don't know if it's a male or female for this one, but it doesn't matter. And I'm guessing that in response to all of those comments, that's why they created one that, as you can see as it's playing now, the full line drops down. And I don't know, I was so mesmerized by this for a good, I don't want to admit how long, but it was
How much
really
pot
cool.
were you on at the time?
All of it.
I will 100%
admit
admit this is amazing, and I love Tetris
Right?
too. So
Yeah, I started watching that, and he does the channel does have a few of these specific where it's the soft body, but they do have like the fuzzy things. Most of the soft body is all just like Jello cubes, but like 3D animation for the Tetris pieces. It's just like I said, I sat and I watched it. I was so mesmerized, and it actually has the Tetris theme song playing. So I was just like, "Oh my god, this is so good!"
It was
As
like the old tech demos. We used to see tech
Yeah.
demos of like water in a box moving around,
Yeah,
and that's what those look like. They look like it's like, hey, check out how strong my CPU is.
yeah, pretty much.
oh well, I don't know, man. I will tell you, I enjoyed yours the most. I mean, Hannah's is typical. I read your article before, actually, just so you know. But I like the soft, whatever you want to call it, soft porn,
Soft body.
Tetris porn, video game porn, whatever you want to call it. It's
Animation
amazing.
porn.
Snuggly Tetris.
Snuggly Tetris. That's the new name of the episode. Oh, love it, love it. Can't say nothing but good things about that. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We can't seem to get under 2 hours no matter what the fuck we do. So we're sorry if that bothers you. Hopefully you enjoy the 2 hours. Make sure you like, subscribe, or join our YouTube and Facebook channels, and share your crap on whatever podcast catcher you're doing. We love 5-star reviews. Hannah enjoys them more than Keith does. Keith likes the 1 stars so that he can feel a little decimated and degraded there. But Hannah loves a 5-star review.
I was my
I'm sorry,
number
it's
in
like
college.
it's an old throwback. Anyway,
That was my number in college. I have uniforms.
Number
with my
5?
number on it. Yeah, that was my number, man.
and your coach is like, "We know you ain't number 1. We know you ain't number 2, but we know you're definitely number 5. Get out there, number 5. Come on, let's go, folks."
You can hear the 5th worst of anyone on the team.
All right. Anyway, enough self-degradation for tonight. Thank you all so much for joining us. We had an amazing time. We'll be back next week with another episode of Stellar Skeptics. I guess we won't get to do the presidential debate number 2 because they don't have one coming. So I don't know. Maybe we'll analyze the vice president one, though. It's kind of boring.
Well, apparently, there's a Biden town hall that's going to be happening.
All right.
Won't be a
So maybe
debate,
we'll look at that a little bit. And I promise you, Hannah or Buddy will have a Canadian or science segment next week. One of the two of you better come up with it, or on air there will be some sort of
Spanking.
If you think the Nazi music was bad, just wait. I could torture you worse. Trust me. I could torture you worse. It doesn't matter. You could do that all you want.
Power here.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'll
Pretty
fix
sure
that.
there's a Geneva Convention out there.
Anyway,
Here.
thank you all so much for joining us. Have an amazing night, and we'll be back next week with another Cellar Door Skeptics.
Breonna Taylor's killers are still loose. Never forget.